All right, me and Phil went somewhere and did something alongside our dear friends, Richie and Sean. So it's only customary that when we go somewhere and do something, we talk about it because, we've got nothing else to do. Right, Phil?
Certainly. We're trapped here forever until content materialises from us.
Absolutely. This is our purgatory, obligatory lifestyle that we love to live.
Yeah, because of all those 5-star reviews, basically, we're trapped here.
That's it. Although, again, actually, that's a good reminder. Before this comes out, I need to figure that bit out. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But, please do leave us a 5-star review in places where 5-star reviews can be left, like iTunes, Spotify. Not that you can actually leave reviews there, but you can click 5 stars. Like and subscribe. All that good stuff. Anyway, we went to Warhammer World in Nottingham to play what, Phil?
Age of Sigmar Doubles. Throne of Skulls. Throne of Skulls is just the tagline for a slightly more casual event than their Grand Tournament ones. I think that's the generic name for the more tournament-y tournaments. Whereas this is a less tournament-y tournament because it's still a tournament.
In place of casual, I always like to say confusing because I feel like most people who are there playing don't really understand that the wins and losses really don't matter. But they definitely feel it when, deep down in their bones.
Yeah, and I would say everyone there, including myself, didn't know all the rules 100% all the time.
Speak for yourself, Phil. I was 100% on it 100% of the time.
I highly doubt that.
That can't be true. Apparently I made one mistake that I found out about, which is that Narholes come down at the start of the battle round as opposed to the start of our hero phase. That was a mistake I made. However, most of the time our opponents were making us go first, and most of the time we were going first throughout. So it was one of those weird ones where it only came up around like game 4 because for the first time in ages we were going second, and we're like, oh, there you go. Lesson learned.
That's fair. I got a couple of rules wrong as well. Mostly, I didn't realise that if you have something that does a reaction, so I had I think it was a heroic artifact that does a reaction to someone activating in combat, that you can only do it once per phase.
Well, yes, because like anything, right? It's like the rule of one, essentially, isn't it?
Well, exactly. But for some weird reason, I assumed reactions, because you're reactivating to something, you'd be able to do it each time it's activated, but you can't. So it's
then there are some reactions, like all-out defense, that continue being in effect, I suppose, but ultimately...
But you've only triggered it once, and that trigger lasts for the phase. And,
so what was the reaction?
So every time someone fought in the combat range of my hero, my warlord,
that D3 Mortals thing.
I do D3 mortal wounds on a 2+.
Yes.
So sometimes, and it was very rare, I would activate it several times in a phase. And to be fair, the majority of the time I didn't roll it, but there were times I've technically gotten a couple of extra cheeky mortal wounds on people because I was just playing it wrong.
Well, you best go back to the organisers and remove yourself from the rankings. Step away and let that 49th or 48th place go to someone who really deserves
it. Yes, maybe. I'll write to each of my opponents individually and let them know on postcard.
You best do. I think it's only fair and right. Yeah. That's an interesting thing about it, though, isn't it, in terms of like the scoring of it? So, yeah, basically, if you've never been to a Throne of Skulls at Warhammer World before, it is weird because basically painting score, which is rewarded by the attendees, as well as favourite game votes, which are awarded by the attendees, essentially carry as much weight as winning. So essentially,
or it counts as a win. In terms of points, yeah.
So effectively, you can get a potential 30 points out of favourite game and favourite army votes. And you can get a potential 15 points from winning all your games. So the highest possible score you could have accrued is 45, basically.
Because each team gives 2 favourite game votes, which is for their opponent's conduct, I guess, or the game itself, and then 2 favourite army votes, and obviously each of those votes for army, for example, have to go to 2 different people, but you can double up and give the same team both a favourite game and favourite army vote.
Blimey! So there is the potential there for you to get so it's a potential for you to get 60 points from your opponent.
Yeah, I guess so. If that's the maths. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. So basically, the maximum score you could have got is 75 points.
Yeah, sounds about right.
That sounds wild. Anyway, yeah, so basically, long story short, it doesn't really matter if you win or lose. Which creates this interesting dynamic, because if you bring an army that can win, like me and Richie did, not that we desperately try-harded to win, we just played the game, but it's fair to say that...
to your maximum potential.
Yeah, well, look, man, I mean, the problem is, I don't think I'm a bad opponent to play against. Typically, I do quite well, but I think, again, you have to have... I think, again, it really depends on the crowd. It really depends on the opponents and what they're looking for. And it's always weird, right? Because, like, game one, we played against a team that were quite inexperienced, and we won that very comfortably. Game two, our opponent basically handed us a win through failing to make a 9-inch charge on 3d6 with a reroll. So essentially, the win was handed. Well, there was a cascading series of errors on their part. Not errors, but just unfortunate happenstance. And then game three, we basically beat a team that had won the 2 games prior, and we were a little bit frustrated to lose that game. And then they proceeded, by the way, to win all the remaining games, and they got best destruction player overall, having only lost to me and Richie. Game 4, we played against a nice lad and his son. The lad himself is some sort of Yorkshire Viking fella. I believe he's associated with or does content creation with the Team England people. He may himself be on Team England, I'm not sure, but he was very good at the game, and his son was there too, and we managed to beat him. And to be fair, he was a good dude. Not really much bad to say about that. And then, in fact, actually, I think that was the one I voted my favourite game, because it was a really, like, challenging experience. And then, yeah, the last game we lost. But it is what it is. It was interesting. But yeah, overall, we got one favourite game vote out of the whole thing and no favourite army votes, which is understandable. I painted mine relatively rapidly. Haven't even posted pictures of them on like Instagram or nothing, because they're not an extraordinarily amazing paint job. I think they're painted consistently well, but they're not going to. Well, evidently they're not going to win any best painted.
Like they're solid tabletop standards. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But they're little scabies, so they are what they are. And Richie, to his credit, tried his best, but he again left it quite late. So again, there was a little bit of rapidness to that paint scheme. So it is what it is.
Definitely one of his nicest armies so far, I would say.
Oh, definitely. I think if he allowed himself just the smallest amount of extra time, I think he could achieve some really great results. And not that he doesn't achieve good results with what he works to. But yeah, look, long story short, we got 4 wins, 1 loss. The loss was in the final game to the team that won the overall. Well, again, they won the overall tournament, so that was cool. But yeah, it was what it was. I think that's the weird thing with those games. You come away from it, and yeah, you just sort of get sucked into the sort of popularity contest side of it, and then you get the overall score. So I think me and Richie came 40th overall with 4 wins, 1 loss. So yeah, that just sort of speaks to the intriguing element of it. And I don't think we were horrible opponents to anyone, but I just think we beat people that probably weren't keen on the fact they lost, and that was that. Or they played other better people, so it is what it is.
Yeah, I think once you get to the 3 wins and above, you're getting people that are probably taking it quite seriously.
Yes, yeah.
But as you say, I also think the voting isn't really indicative of you or your team or your army. It's more indicative of the other people that they play against. And it's like, you could be a fantastic player, you could have an amazing army, but they just had another 1 or 2 opponents that were just slightly better than you.
Which is what happened, I suppose.
Well, that's what we will, believe
that's
ourselves.
That's what we'll say.
That's what we go with. But I mean, who's to say? Like on the way back, I came up with the idea that maybe you rank favorite games and favorite armies for every opponent, and you do it on a sliding scale of 1 to 5. That way, if every person is a good, jolly person, then you'll all score much higher, rather than it being a all or nothing, which is sort of a winner takes all kind of situations, which is what you currently have. I guess the only downside to that is you will get definitive feedback if you're a terrible person or your army's awful, because you're getting scores from every opponent, which is, maybe what some people need. But you would need thick skin to come away from that event and be like, cool, I scored ones for all favourite game votes. I must be a terrible person. That will be, at least now in the current system, we can believe that we were nice enough, but just not the best.
I think that, again, that's one of those weird systems that can be gamed in a weird way, because if you're really keen on winning, you could just be giving low scores to everybody. And again, I think that's
true. That is true.
I think the problem is, right, at the end of the day, what you have to realise is Throne of Skulls events essentially are popularity contests, and you achieve popularity by having a nicely painted army with a really cool over-the-top theme. So many of the armies that do well have like really beautifully custom-built things that are all very spangly and lovely, and the quality of the painting is always extraordinarily high. And then, you just have to kind of rock up, not care whether you win or lose. In fact, you're actively encouraged to give the game away. Like most of the people who do well, who actually win the overall, kind of scrape by with 2 to 3 wins, and presumably the whole time are just kind of voluntarily doing stuff that's not in the best interest of winning the game, but
or
just
maybe it's more fun or whatever.
Yeah, it's more fun.
Although I guess so, it's to be said there was there was the Throne of Skulls winner, which was the favourite game votes included on, and then there was the best in factions, which chaos, death, order, destruction. Plus there was like mixed. I don't. Which is for someone that doesn't fall into those other buckets, and that was just based on wins.
Score, yeah.
Oh, it wasn't actually even on your wins and losses, right? It wasn't it just your actual scores that you achieved, like your victory points, basically throughout the missions. So again,
Correct.
That's like it's odd that there's like several different methods of scoring in this one sort of overall system. So if you want to go and be a very competitive person, you can sort of do that even at these slightly more, less tournamenty events.
Exactly. But the truth is, you just have to sort of divorce yourself from any of that thinking and just go along and try and have fun with it and not try and win and not try and lose, especially. Just sort of, go along, have a laugh, be a nice person, try your best, but ultimately, don't try hard. That's the trick, I think.
Basically.
But ultimately, it's difficult, though, in the moment, though, right? Because at the same time, like, I don't know. My concern always is maybe I'm just too hardwired to when I play the game in event settings that I want to try and play it properly. But it's that thing where it's like, I don't know. For me, I don't have a good gaming experience when I'm just trying to throw it away. I am trying to play to the best of my abilities. But whatever. It's an interesting learning curve. I think the AOS crowd are also a bit different from the 40k crowd. I think, more and more that I go and spend time with like the AOS crowd, I feel like, many times I'm like, oh, there are a lot of really good people here who are kind of on my wavelength and I'm kind of enjoying it. But then I also find that there are a lot of very, like, I think when you actually level into the kind of like, air quotation marks, good players, the kind of try-hardy attitudes are almost more extreme in my experience. But, there is a delta between them and like the normal players. But like, I don't know. I think AOS is a really good game. I really enjoy it as a system. I think it's got lots of fun mechanics. I really rate it. I encourage people to play it. But you always come away from these events with a bit of a sort of thing, especially when you don't do well from a favourite game perspective, because you're like, just obviously might have not just been a nice person that weekend or not done as well as I could. Because like typically for me, and I know this sounds incredibly arrogant, but typically for me when I go to like 40k events, I get a few favourite game votes, which is lovely, and I appreciate it.
You shining your Night of the Inner Circle award in the background.
Well, at this point, mate, that person is no longer who I am. Mate. Like, I mean, this is the thing. Like, the guy who won that is on a on a cellular level isn't me anymore, so I can't really even claim ownership of it. I mean, for all I know, it's a collective fiction in the Matrix or whatever. But anyway, the point is that. Yeah, I don't know, mate. I think, on the whole, I thought the event was good. I enjoy playing Age of Sigmar. I enjoy playing with Richie. He's a great doubles partner, and his army really complemented mine well. I think me and him have a really good... But I think and again, I don't know whether... And this is arrogant. I think I'm quite good at synergizing with most people. Like I leave people to kind of do their own thing, and I kind of trust in what they're doing, and then try and sort of fill in around it. Like Richie wasn't getting annoyed with me, so to speak, but he was constantly looking towards me for validation or sort of affirmation of what he was doing. He'd be like, "Oh, what do you reckon?" I was like, "I don't know, do what you want to do." He's like, "But I need input."
So you weren't doing a team discussion about where stuff's going and what you're doing. You were basically separately playing the same game.
No. I tell him he'd do something, and I do something in response. I was like, "Okay, that's what he's done. I'll try and fill in the blanks." Because I don't like to try and steer the situation. I mean, sometimes it's necessary, and you've doubled with me a few times, mate, and I feel like the same is true. We have a broad conversation about what we think like the best tactical options are, but at that point, it's sort of like, yeah, all right, go do. I don't know. Would you say that when we've doubled together that I've tried to backseat drive your army? I don't feel like I do.
I'm probably not, but normally we've done very well when we've teamed up. So I sometimes maybe just defer to your judgment. I don't know. But then sometimes you're like, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just do what you want, and I'm like, okay.
But I think that's the thing. Like genuinely, like I think me and Rich, we had a good sort of like, because we play a lot together. I play a lot with you. I play a lot with all my friends that we certainly do Look Out Sir with, for example. So yeah, I find it very easy to just kind of, because I kind of understand how you're going to do it and what you're going to prioritize and how you're going to think about it. So I always sort of wibble in, which is fine. But no, on the whole, it was good. I had a good time. I enjoyed it. I'm excited for the 40k doubles in April. I'm actually kind of really infused about the idea of this army that we're working on, but we can talk about that another time. But yeah, no, honestly, I think, again, the team at Warhammer World do a great job. I think the quality of the terrain for Age of Sigmar is exceptional.
So good.
Incredible. Like, really, really strong. And yeah, the quality of the sort of armies in attendance is really good. My only thing, I suppose, really ever with this stuff is always like, it is mad, and it was certainly mad this weekend gone, how busy Warhammer World is becoming these days.
Yeah, like lunchtime on the Saturday. I'm not someone that hates, I'm not particularly averse to crowds. No. I tried going to the store with maybe 10 minutes left before the next game started, and I just gave up. I was like, it's far, far too busy. It's the busiest I've ever seen it in my life. And I was like, I don't want this. I'm just going to go back to my table and wait it out for like a few minutes. And I'll come back later when it's a bit quieter, which never really happened, just because we just didn't seem to have as much free time this time than normal. Normally we get a chance to go around the exhibition centre because that's included in our ticket price. Didn't have any time this time. And that's maybe because our games went, to the clock's end. And then maybe we just had too leisurely a lunch. I don't know.
Yeah, me and Richie managed to finish all our games, bar one, on time. Our game 4 went the distance and didn't finish in its entirety. We called it on Battle Round 4, although we talked out the final conclusion of that.
Did you actually do the talking out of the?
We conceded it. I mean, it was one of those conversations where, fair enough, the guy, the Yorkshire Viking fella, understandably, he wanted to sort of talk out the last battle round because ultimately, it was a really close game. I mean, me and Richie were up by 1 point, and he had played out of his, skin. Well, we had played out of our skin. His army was very strong. It's only because I've played against you so much because he was running very similar lists to you.
It was sort of Nighthawk with Hex Race, wasn't it? And Flesh Eater Corps with also their cavalry, basically.
Correct, yeah. So I have a lot of experience into that matchup, so I was able to manage and shut down certain things really well. And Richie was just, really amazing in terms of being like a durable base. But yeah, he was very eager to talk it through because he wanted to sort of get the overall score. And it seemed important to him to get as many points out of the game as possible for his overall rankings, which is understandable. People who obviously approach the game competitively, definitely prioritize that. My frustration is, and my difficulty is, I suppose, is that I hate talking through rounds in Age of Sigmar because it's just too random. In like 40k,
Yeah.
you can draw some cards and go, can I do that? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it's quite quantifiable because it's a very you go, I go thing, and there's no real interactions beyond saving throws that your opponent can kind of bring to the table, especially if you're not going to charge into any combats. And even if you are charging into combats, you can usually look at the CP pool and make an assertion on what the outcome of that's going to be. Because if your opponent's got 1 CP and you charging, well, you know they're not interrupting unless, of course, there's a captain and other variables. But the point is 40k is quite quantifiable. You can tell who's going to win and you can talk it through. I still don't appreciate or approve of that either, but I get it and people do it and I've done it, so whatever. But in AOS, it's like, cool, you move in your movement phase, I'll respond. You shoot in your shooting phase, I'll respond.
Yeah.
You charge in your charge phase. Yeah.
Oh, and you can responding, charging, and then you are alternating. Yeah.
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 I was just going to say, and you roll dice and you whiff. Like the amount of times in AOS, a certainty of like, I'm charging in with this guy and he's got 5 attacks, hitting on freeze, wounding on freeze, rend 2, damage 5. And then you just roll 1s and 2s. And you're like, oh, well, that happened. That's AOS through and through. And that's the problem I have with that stuff. Is like when someone wants to sort of talk through rounds with me, I'm like, well, how you can never know what's going to happen. So I try, in AOS, I try and do it even less, but...
Yeah, we had a sort of awkward chat with our last opponent in game 5 who wanted to talk it out. So we only got to the end of round 3, which wasn't far at all. And, you know, I don't want to throw them under the bus, but they took a very long time with their turns. They took like 10 minutes just to work out their very first battle tactic because they were sort of talking everything out and all the possibilities before even doing anything. And we did ask them several times to speed up. They said, don't worry, we finish all our games. We were like, oh, okay. And there's like 10 minutes left for our last turn 3. So we sort of rushed through it thinking, well, this is it and we're calling it. And they were like, oh, but we're going to talk it out right. And we were like, why? The time is done. It was basically a bit of an awkward conversation because they had a lot of their army left and we didn't have much. So, and we were quite far ahead on points, but they felt in those 2 turns that they could score enough points to win.
Oh yeah.
And the end result was if they scored the max they could do, and we were scoring just, you know, what we could do without literally moving anything around, they would win by 1 point. And afterwards, I was like, well, I don't think they necessarily would have won because we could have actually done stuff in those turns.
Yeah.
And it became a bit of an awkward conversation.
But I think this is the thing with AOS, right? And again, to be completely clear, as I said, I gave these guys my favourite game vote because I genuinely loved the game. The 4 rounds that we played were exceptional. It was so much fun. I literally loved it. And then at the end, when we tried to talk it through, it just became that thing where he was like, well, I think I could score 5 or 6. And I was like, cool, well, I think the same. Because the problem is like, how do you know? And that's the thing.
Exactly. So, you know, in the end, we sort of conceded and was like, look, just you take the points that you want and, you know, we don't care. Like, because Sean was getting a bit riled up by it. So we were just like, let's just end this as quick as possible rather than having to call a judge over it. But it was a bit of a sort of a sour note to the end of the game. Like, if we had deliberately slow played them to eke out a win, that would have been an awful thing to do. And it's like, that wasn't happening. It was, it felt more on them that, you know, they were playing their very best optimal turns by taking the lion's share of the time, and we were conscious of time and therefore rushing our turns slightly. But their tactic was to always sort of, you know, come back from behind in their last few turns. But we still had quite a bit on the table. We had 1 unit of Hex Wraiths, and we only had like two models in, I think. But you know, with some rallies, it's fine. And then we had Prince Vordry, who's like 400 odd points, and he barely had any wounds taken on him. So I still feel like with that, all we needed to do was deny them a battle tactic or sit on one of the key objectives for 1 turn, and then we would have won. So
Yeah.
I don't think that was in the realms of impossibility. It wasn't like we were tabled, in which case I would be like, cool, we can talk it out quite
Yeah.
straightforward. And then speaking to a couple of other players, it feels like a lot of people do talk it out, which is gaming the system, because we didn't do that in any of our other... I think there was maybe one other game we didn't get to, the end of the turns. And if you are talking it out, then you're maximizing your points, which go towards your faction award.
Yeah.
And then people that don't, because they're playing by the letters of the the tournament pack, which says once the clock finishes, that's your turn. You don't do another turn because and they don't really say don't talk it out, but that's pretty much implied by the don't play any more turns. So I sort of feel like people playing by the rules are being penalised. It's sort of like doping in, cycling, right? But it's a known secret that everyone does it, because if you don't, you're just a mug and you're just not going to win ever because everyone else is doing it. And it feels like talking it out is the 40k equivalent. So I sort of feel
equivalent, I suppose, in this instance.
yeah, I guess. So I sort of feel like that's something that, needs to be standardized amongst players.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the thing I would say is, it's obviously a bit rubbish that in your situation it became more of a negative. I think in the case of like my game where we talked it through, I think it was a very positive experience for the whole in terms of that we came to a kind of an alignment. I think there was some initial, what's the best word for it? Some initial confusion that I wasn't immediately willing to talk it out because, like I say, when it comes to AOS, I'm not super keen on it. But truth be told, I felt really bad about that because I thought to myself, you know what, actually, it's worth playing along and not being difficult because I don't want to be difficult and I don't want the guy to come away thinking, oh, I had to play against someone who didn't want to, talk it out. Like, I don't want to be...
Language, Dan.
I think that's within the acceptable parameters. Are you not? Are you saying no to arse? I think arse is fine.
No, you said the full word.
What?
Yeah. Well, no, you said it a second time.
That's fine.
No, it's not.
That is within the acceptable limits. If you put that into like I don't know the BBFC
come
age
on,
rating
Dan.
board,
We're obviously got to stop it now anyway. But that's
no, we're not stopping it now. I'm saying it's fine. I'm drawing a line. I will consult the BBFC. It's in the. It's
well,
within
you get one swear word if it's an American movie, but also we're kid friendly, Dan. We're kid friendly.
Oh, you get one in an American movie. You get, and you can say as much as you want. Anyway, the point is, Phil, I'm going to bleep all that out. It's fine. We're going to leave it in for comedic effect. The point is that I can't even remember how you threw me off. Anyway, I didn't want to be the naughty boy.
That guy, yes.
Yeah, the naughty boy that created a problem. And, to be fair, he was there with his kid as well. And it was a lovely game. And that was the thing. So it was cool. It was fine. The problem always is with it, though, is in AOS. It's like, well, I'm up a point, right? So the current score is 28-29 to me and Richie. You're going to tell me that you can score 10. So I'm going to do the same. And how are you going to prove me otherwise? You know what I mean? It's like literally
and if it's very obvious in terms of what's left on the table, otherwise you're sort of going, well, cool, I'm going to move here and do some stuff and not really interact with you. It seems to be how people do it, but as you say, it's all very vague and nebulous and not at all accurate. So it's just a way of you both getting more points, which feels like rigging the game. Ultimately, and if the result doesn't change, like that's less of an issue, I think, because ultimately, weirdly for most tournaments, your victory points, are maybe a draw decider. It's not the main thing you're being scored on. Whereas weirdly in this tournament, you are for at least one of the awards.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting set of variables. I think this is the thing. It's sad that you had a bad experience with it, and it's a bit rubbish. And I'm sure, if the people you played against are listening to this, I'm sure we don't want to sort of throw anyone a bus or be rude about anyone in particular. And we understand, right? Like people.
No, I don't have any bad feelings about it. I felt like I was sort of caught unawares that that was their intention, and if they had sort of said it from the very beginning, or even at the last battle round, it's like I played out the last battle round assuming we weren't doing any more turns.
Yeah.
So technically I would have positioned myself much better knowing that we're going to talk out the last 2 turns.
Well, exactly, because you were playing to a set parameters that you understood to be the case, but that's always that's always the thing. And again, yeah, there just seems to be the sweeping assertion. But I do agree with you. I think it's a blight on the game. I think ultimately, get your turns in. If you don't get your turns in, well, that's it. Call it a day.
But part of me is like, there's a skill in playing quickly to the clock, and that is part of the game. And it's like, if you don't finish your game, that's kind of on you, or you and your opponents, right? It's like you've both got to play quickly enough to. And to me, that's the motivator of not talking it out, right? It's like, if you want to score the maximum points you possibly can, you need to be very quick in your turns to make sure you play the full 5 rounds. You can't play 3 or 4 and then bolt on an extra one just because you want the extra points. It's like, that's your fault for being a slow player. And I say this as someone that can be quite a slow player at times.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, in complete transparency, I think in the game 4 that we ended up running long, I can't say for sure who was the slow player, because it didn't feel like either of us were slow playing.
Sometimes there's just a lot of dice to roll, and quite often, like at least with Nighthorn, I know especially, we can be in combat turn 1 quite easily. So you're rolling dice and lots of dice right from the first battle round, and that slows the game down indefinitely. And also, I think quite a few times, and we did it in a few of our games, and I try to avoid it in the later ones, is you want to be polite and you want to talk through your army and explain all the gimmicks, especially if they've not played against your faction before, and you want to explain the heroic trait and the artifact, and that eats up like 20 minutes if all 4 of you are doing that. And sometimes I'm just, I think the last few games, not the last one, but the one before, I think we were like, oh yeah, cool, let's just do stuff, because we all kind of knew what stuff everyone was doing vaguely, and I think that saved you so much more time.
I always say
even
that
though
to my
it's the
opponents.
politer thing.
I always say it to my opponents, I'm going like, I will explain what's in my army if you want me to. I don't care what's in yours. And then they kind of sometimes can get annoyed by the fact they say I don't care. But then so I've had to try and modify the language around it, where I'm going, just so you know, I won't retain what you tell me, so don't tell me.
Well,
and then they go, no, but I still
that is the case. Yeah, I find it like you get some initial points, and then it's all word salad, and my brain just can't process it at all. And Sean even mentioned that to me. He's like, it just goes over my head after a while. And quite often it's noisy, you can't really hear them. Often during deployment, that's when I'll say, okay, what's the movement of this? Or how punchy is this? Or how killy is it in combat or from shooting? What's the threat range of stuff? I'll ask them those often during deployment, because then that's when I actually need to take that knowledge and do something with it in terms of my deployment to counter.
Yeah, but I do think as well in AOS, I think they've done a really good job of conveying through the miniatures and the rules what stuff is. Like, you never feel overly surprised. Like, if something's super bulky and covered in armor, it's probably got a 3-up save. If it's slender wearing a vest, it's probably got a 6-up save. It's like, normally, if it's slender, has a bit of armor on it, it's maybe a 4-up save with 2 wounds. If it's bulky with loads of armor on it, it's a 3-up save with 3 wounds or something. Like, the language or the relationship is a lot easily understood. And it's like, if it's cavalry, when it charges, it's probably going to be better. Yeah. There's all these sort of things that kind of immediately become clear. But yeah, like, I think that's the thing. Ultimately, I and again, it's not that I don't care. It's just like I said, I just can't retain it. And like, people start saying stuff at me, and it's like, it's gone. But then they worry it, don't they? They worry so much because they don't want to sort of do you dirty. They don't want to sort of turn around to you at one point and go like, aha, I've done a thing. And you go, well, I wish you told me about that. And then it's like, because I imagine a lot of people respond that way. But to me, I'm like, okay, good. And I always say to my opponents, it's like, look, if you really want to cheat, please do, because I don't care that much. Like, if you really want to win that badly, go nuts.
Yeah, I mean, there was 1 or 2 times where because I don't mind if someone's like, oh, I forgot to do this thing, can I do it now? And often it doesn't really impact on the flow of the game. It's like, it might do in terms of, oh, I can do some mortal wounds to you on the charge, and that's the combat. And actually, if I'd killed one of your guys, maybe I would have been taking less damage in return. And it's like, I'll happily do the roll, but, you know, I don't want to take the whole combat sequence back, because that's, you know, that was my fault for forgetting. But there were sometimes where we, you know, we're redeploying, for example, after someone's moved and then they've sort of changed their mind about where they wanted to position something. And I'm like, oh, okay, but you're sort of only really doing that because you've now seen I want to redeploy that unit. So I sort of feel like those moments you do need to, you know, stick to. But we were polite enough and be like, yeah, cool, right, if you want to do it, like, go ahead. Like, we'll just play it as it is. Yeah.
I mean, I personally, I could never, I would almost never take back something based on information revealed. Like, if I had made a decision and then my opponent goes, aha, I would be like, all right, that's fine. And I know it makes me sound like, oh, I'm so great. Obviously, I have tizzes. Obviously, I get wound up about stuff. Obviously, I have moments. I'm a human being playing a game of small toy soldiers. I have a certain amount of isms that I have to wrestle with, but I also try my best to be sort of decent about it. But I think some people maybe, you know, have more kind of extreme reactions to that stuff. And that's not to say that I'm perfect all the time, because I'm definitely not. And I definitely have moments, and I definitely will have opponents that will have come away from this weekend going, oh God, that guy, what a nightmare. And that's fine. You know, that's part of the course. The problem is you enter into a social contract with a stranger to play a game of small toy soldiers where you both agree to a series of, you know, rules that are only applicable if you both agree that they are. And ultimately the kind of social contract and overall kind of, you know, mental, physical construct that holds that together is very, very obtuse. And ultimately, you know, things will go wrong along the way. So you just got to try your best. And that's always what I try and do. I fail probably more than I succeed, but I continue to try and do better. And that's always how I sort of look at it. But yeah, you know, it's 40K. Oh, sorry, it's Age of Sigmar in this case. It's Warhammer, whatever. It's fun. Yeah. We should probably, rather than just whinging about weird interactions, I've sort of said how my games went. By the way, I took Skaven. I took Shooty Skaven. Horrible army. I hated myself. No wonder I didn't get any favourite game votes. When someone moves anywhere, I go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick up 18 dice. I'm going to roll them. And whatever the cumulative value of those 18 dice is, that's how many shots I've got, which on average was about 65 to 70. So
which is insane, right?
Which is insane. Now I'm going to roll 70 dice. Oh, what's that? I'll use 40k terminology. The sustain hit 1. Oh, that's good. So you roll all these dice. And after you're done with it, you basically turn around to your opponent and go, oh, there you go. You've taken 30 wounds. And they go, yay, it's my turn. And I've taken 30 wounds. I'll roll my saves. Oh, it's dead. And you're like, yeah, this is fun. Yeah, it's a horrible, oppressive unit. I love it because it's super powerful and super lame and the exact sort of crazy game-winning combo that you need. But it is definitely abusive and a little bit over the top. And I think from a design perspective, from a rules writing perspective, GW could definitely have done better in terms of making that a more streamlined experience, because it is not only irritating because it's really powerful, it's irritating because it's extraordinarily tedious to watch the person do it.
Yeah.
So I think it fires on
especially because you're doing D6 shots per like model.
3d6 shots per model.
Oh God. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a lot. If it was just like a flat 2 and you knew where you were, or even a flat 5, right, in that example, it would still take a long time. But the rolling the dice and calculating does take a while, and we had an opponent with the same one. I played a lot of Skaven. For context, obviously I had my Nighthaunt with loads of Hex Wraiths, and then Sean had Sublight Gravelords with the
Blood Knights.
The Blood Knights. I was thinking Black Knights, but they're the skeleton ones. Blood Knights and Bordrai, who's the named character on Zombie Dragon, and that was he had a unit of 10 knights, and that was it. So, which were pretty terrible most games, to be honest, until the last game where we had this hilarious moment. So, Sean is known for being an awful dice roller, and he just can't roll anything to save his life. And then in the last game, he accidentally dropped some dice, and the roll was incredible. So I was like, just keep that up. So he just did this like hand drop, like mic drop equivalent of his dice, and they sort of scattered everywhere, but they were all like 5s and 6s. So we perfected the technique to he drop it into a little box lid. So they were at least contained, and his dice rolling just markedly improved in that last game. It was incredible. And that was like the most funniest moment in the whole tournament, basically, that he suddenly learned how to roll dice by just dropping them.
He has since 3D printed like some kind of funnel, hasn't he?
Yeah, so that is I think it was our last opponent had that actually. It's a shipping container for 40k that is a sort of dice sorter. So you just chuck in the dice to the top, and it outslots rows of like 5 dice at a time, so it's quite good for quickly counting your dice. So yeah, he 3D printed one of those because he saw it in action with our opponent and was like, oh, that's actually really interesting. So yeah, he's got that now, which is good.
There you go. Anyway, yeah, so you were sort of like Gravelords and Nighthorn. I was Skaven. Richie was Trugs. So basically we had a super durable block of flesh being scurried around by rats that shot a lot. So it wasn't a particularly fun combination for our opponents to play against, which is what it is. But yeah, so that was it. And yeah, we did really well. As I say, we won the first 4 games, lost the last one. I think in the ITC scoring system, based on how they did it, I think we came 9th overall.
Yeah, it was 9th for you guys. Yeah, because you were, by the 4th game, you were one of 3 teams that had won all your matches. So,
yes,
that's correct. That's pretty good. And if it was like a sort of a win path system, you would have been in the top 3, I guess.
Yeah.
But obviously it scored it differently. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was that. And then overall we came 40th because of cumulative scores and other things. And there was about 65-ish something teams like that. So about
something like that.
30 players. So yeah, big turnout. Good times all round. Enjoyed it. The Warhammer World events team do well. Very busy, but ultimately enjoyable. Scenery's great. Staff are great. The venue's great. Pepsi Max. Hang on. I actually spoke to the bartender there. Not to throw anyone under a bus, but lads, someone needs to put out a petition, maybe we do, for Warhammer World Pepsi Max prices. I'm just going to throw it out there. £3, I'll say £3.50. I think it was £3.80, but £3.50 for a fountain drink. You know, like one of the flipping, like, you know, like when you go to Nando's and you get the bottomless things. I think if I go to Nando's and I buy like a bottomless Coke, I feel like that's like £4. So like literally 20p less, I get one. It's like
it was. I'm pretty sure it was around 15 quid for 4. So it was pricey when I went there and I bought us all drinks on the Friday. And at least with a tea is £2.50, and for every 6-1 or after your 6-1, you get one for free. So it's you get some encouragement with hot drinks.
That's why I was on the flat whites constantly. I was like, I can't be dealing with this. This is insane. To be fair, I imagine, like, I mean, I was having it's one of those January things, isn't it? Keeping it clean. But, yeah, like, flipping hell. Pepsi Max at £3, whatever it is. Like, that's madness. Like, you know, come on. £1.80 to £2.50, fine.
Yeah.
For over £3 for a soft drink. They're mugging you off, aren't they? Anyway, yeah, we'll start that as a petition. Warhammer World, make your Pepsi cheaper.
Yeah.
That's our ask. Absolutely. Yeah. But, you know, according to the guy behind the bar, much as was illustrated by the fact that I was buying it, people pay. So, you know, it's a captive audience.
Yeah, it is a captive audience. You don't really get much choice, I don't think.
Well, that's it. Anyway, yeah, but that's it in terms of things I have to say about that. Tell us about your path to victory, Phil, and then we can end this segment and do something else.
I believe we lost our first game. We played a lot of Skaven. I think it was like 3 teams in total. So, Narholes were the bane of my life. Constantly popping up everywhere. That was a real pain. Yeah, so it lost the first game. So I was like, sure, we're on the fun team now. We're going down the bottom of the tables where it's all casual. Then we won our second one, and I was like, oh no, we've gotten to the tables where people lost one and won one, and now they want to win again. So I think we lost our third one. I think we then won our fourth and then lost our fifth. I think pretty much every single game we got double turned. We were constantly made to go first, and we were constantly double turned, and not in all the games, but the majority of them. And it seems to be, if you're double turned, that's the thing that swings it for, oh yeah, we're definitely losing now. It seemed to be a bit of a theme.
I think you have to be smart about how you manage the double turn, because you can plan around it. However, I will say that the doubles format, I think, personally, amplifies the efficiency of the armies to the point that the double turn is more impactful.
Getting a heroic trait and an artifact, basically, and you're doubling up on your army abilities that activate in the hero phase and things like that. So yeah, it did feel like a really big swing every time, and quite often we were doubled on the second turn, like second back round. So it was quite a key stage of the game when that did happen.
I did notice as well, a lot of people went very alpha strikey with it. Like, they just had armies that were built around hit hard and hit fast. And yeah, I think that was happening quite frequently. Me and Richie kind of built a list that was kind of intended around the idea of giving away the second turn and going first. And we had strategies to deal with that. And again, they worked very well up until they didn't, which was game 5. But yeah, it is what it is at the end of the day. It's, GW still continue to do more to try and balance that mechanic. And I do think on the whole, double turns are fine in normal 2,000 point games. It's weird, isn't it, right? Because when I'm playing normal 2,000 point one-on-one Age of Sigmar, the double has an impact, but it doesn't feel that impactful. Whereas in the doubles, it felt like, God, yeah, these are meaningful. So I do think there's something to the synergy that changes it, because people were bringing efficiency in a way that sort of amplifies the offering.
And it could be not just it's the synergy of the two armies together as well, quite often, in addition to the extra sort of tactics and stuff that you can do with the heroes and warlord traits and things like that. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting one to see. And even in our last game, we were so ahead on points, they got to double and still do a battle tactic. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, if you're 6 points under, which they were, they still got to do it, which is sort of one of the reasons why I got to catch up slightly in the last turn. And I was like, oh, okay.
There you go. But on the whole, look, genuinely, sincerely encourage those of you who haven't to give Warhammer World events a go. They are expensive, and presumably if you're not near,
and they sell out
very
quick as well.
Oh God, the 40k one that we're going to. I mean, like, fair play to Richie. He played it a blinder getting tickets for that one. But they sell out quickly. They're expensive. The weekend is expensive, right? Like, I mean, hotel rooms, travel, food, everything. It all adds up. Like you do spend a lot on it. We like to look at it as like, for me, it's like my kind of quarterly. Or maybe sort of free time a year kind of weekend away with my friends and things. And I kind of, it's kind of like one of those things, because they're sort of like big kind of weekend events for me that I sort of really build up to. So as much as it is expensive, I kind of spread out like the pain, I suppose. But yeah, I think ultimately they're great events and they're good fun. And the guys who run it are a great team. The venue's amazing. The boards, at least in terms of AOS, are really strong. I can't really speak to 40k because I've not been to a Warhammer World 40k event since 2023. So this next one in April is going to be the first one we've gone to, or I've gone to anyway, for 40k in a while. So I'm really excited, actually. I think it's going to be a super fun one. So I'm really keen to kind of get into that and get going with that one. And I think, you know, having the recent experience of this AOS one, I think it's going to help frame how I kind of approach the 40k one, because I think I'm going to be a lot more kind of like whatever, because
right, yeah.
Because let's be honest, Phil, your and my army is probably not going to be that good.
No.
Although, to be fair, it depends how many wardens you take, I suppose.
1 unit of 5, because that's what I've got.
Fine. There you go. So there we are. There are MVPs, basically. They're the ones that need to do all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
There you go. They're certainly not going to be your bike squad.
No, I was thinking about leaving those behind, to be honest. As much as I think they look cool, which they certainly do, I think
you have to bring them for that alone, though, mate.
Maybe.
You've got to think about the wow factor, you know.
That's true.
I think what you have to judge it on is, let's see how Valdor turns out in the paint job when they've got them done, and we can make an evaluation whether we're going for cool points or whether we're just accepting that I'm a weak link and let the theme down.
Let the team down. Okay, yeah, we'll see how we get on.
Yeah, exactly. But if I can paint him up well, you can look at it and go, oh, all right then, let's not worry about optimal army and just go for cool points.
Fair.
Because I think it should be good. I mean, I think the combination of Valdor leading Dark Angels, or Angels of Death as they will be known, alongside Thunder Warriors, I think it should hit the ground, I reckon.
Yeah, should be a good thing.
Well, we'll see. I've got to, as I say, I'm going to do my best to try, Phil. For you, I will try.
I appreciate it.
Exactly. That would be amazing, though. I mean, imagine, Phil, you and me winning a Best Painted award. Could you imagine? Would you ever imagine that was possible?
I mean, I still can't, to be honest.
No, I can't either, to be fair. You always get overlooked. Your stuff always looks terrible from a distance. That's the problem.
Yeah, quite likely.
I'm joking. Your stuff always looks amazing. It's always that thing, isn't it? Like, I can't believe you didn't get nominated this time. What happened?
I sort of understand it. I think while we had a great theme and there was great colour, sort of synergy, I just don't think either of ours are painted to as high a standard as some of the others on the in the cabinet. I mean, to be fair, it was definitely higher than one or two of them, but a lot of them had tons of conversion work. In a sort of very obvious way, and I sort of say this, like, Sean's army is beautiful, but hasn't, I don't think, really got any conversion work in it at all. Mine has a ton, but you don't necessarily realise it unless you appreciate how dated the old Hexwraith kit is, and then you might go, oh yeah, these aren't them, but they just look like Nighthaunt, riding horses. So if you didn't know that, yeah, you'd just be like, oh yeah, these are just the normal kits, probably.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, look, anyway, there we go. That was a bunch of chat about an AOS doubles that we did. Hopefully you enjoyed it. A little bit of drama in there. I said some naughty words. Bad me. But there you go. That's that. Thanks very much. Cheers very much to Warhammer World for putting on a cracking event, even though it's expensive. But, you know, that is what it is. You know what you're signing up for, and it was enjoyable. And that's it, really. Excited for the next one. Transitional noise. Wow.